Hello. Some conversations are easy, some are uncomfortable, and some are absolutely essential, even when we don't quite know the right words. Welcome to this refreshed and new look version of Keep the Conversation Going. We've reimagined the new version to be face-to-face, brutally honest and meaningful for everyone listening, because conversations that matter most deserve time, care and full attention. Today's conversation is one of those. We're talking about suicide prevention, not in a clinical way, not with statistics as the headline, but through people, lived experience and hope. I'm joined for this new look series by a brilliant co-host, Eloise Hall, Strategic Development Director at eServe, and together we're honoured today to be in conversation with Alice Endy, MBE, the founder of Ripple Suicide Prevention. Eloise, before we bring Alice into the conversation, just quick introduction for yourself. So welcome to this new look, and I suppose as we move forward, what are you hoping to get from the series and the conversations that we have?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can just say to start with as well, it's a huge honour to be co-hosting with you, an absolute privilege. I've been an avid listener and supporter for a long time, so to be sat in the hot seat next to you, I'm loving. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. I suppose my why I'm kind of been involved in the Mortgage Industry Mental Health Charter, at its simplest form, I believe truly and deeply in our industry. I love being part of it, and when you love something you want to protect it and look after it and help it grow to be the best version of itself. So that's really kind of why I got involved. I really want to lead from the front in supporting and building a culture and a place everyone can go to work where they're not just prioritising workloads but actually prioritising their well-being as well. And this kind of series really engulfs and emphasises that whole conversation, that these conversations aren't always easy but they are necessary, and it's really important for us to keep building that momentum and keep the conversation going.
Well, listen, thanks for being part of this and an enthusiastic member of our steering group. So you work brilliantly behind the scenes and couldn't do a lot of stuff without you. So moving over to yourself, Alice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us here today. I think you and I first met back in September, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
At a sporting event, and back then you were involved. I think it was a five-a-side event for Shawbrooker, one of the signatories. And I've been watching with interest, since then, and been dead keen to get you involved in this conversation. Love the authenticity, love everything that you're trying to achieve. But do you want to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself? And I know. The Ripple Suicide, the foundations are actually built on some difficult circumstances. But do you want to tell people about yourself and maybe some background?
Yeah, of course. So firstly, thanks so much for having me, and honoured to be the first person in person to do this with you. So thank you. I really got into the world of mental health back in November of 2020 without wanting to. It was the middle of COVID, so lots of people were feeling lonely, isolated, and it was no different for my brother Josh. I didn't quite realise the extent actually though of how much Josh was struggling with his mental health until Wednesday the 25th of November 2020, when at 5:28 in the morning I had a knock at my door. I opened the door, 2 police officers stood in front of me, and they asked to come in, sit me down, and very bluntly tell me that 2 hours prior they found somebody that they believed had taken their own life, and very sadly that person had been identified as my little brother Josh. So life for my parents and I from that moment just stopped, frankly. It was like they'd let a bomb off in our living room. Josh was 21 when he took his own life. And in the immediate aftermath of losing Josh, I just became absolutely obsessed with going through his devices. I wanted to find answers. Why? What was so bad in his life that he believed this was his best option? And when I went through his phone, his laptop, his tablet, I'd found for about 6 months prior to him making that decision that he'd actually been going on the internet and he'd been searching for how he could end his own life. And very sadly, those searches that he was conducting were actually giving him tips, instructions, encouragement to do that. So I couldn't believe really what I was seeing, and I wanted to make a change. And it was Christmas Day of 2020 that I had the idea of doing something about it, and actually creating a piece of technology which intercepts and intervenes when anybody is out there struggling, searching on the internet for harmful content to do with self-harm and suicide. So that's what Ripple is. That's how I got into the world of mental health. And everything I do now is in memory of my brother and for my brother.
Wow. And had there been any kind of suggestion or insight or any kind of... Was it just a total curveball, just totally out of the blue? There'd been no signs? Had Josh shown any kinds of, I don't know, signs of depression or anxiety or anything previously?
Do you know, in answer to that question, I would say yes. Did I know at the time they were signs? No.
Yeah.
One of the things that I want to do now when I'm talking, when I'm coming on opportunities like today, is actually to highlight to people that it isn't just the person that's withdrawn and depressed that's the person that's suicidal. Sometimes actually it's the person that's got the biggest smile, that's the joker of the pack, that is actually the one that's struggling. Some of the signs at the time that I missed, frankly, Josh's eating habits completely changed. He put on about 2.5 stone before he took his own life very quickly. Which showed he obviously wasn't looking after himself as well as he should have been doing. He lost interest in his appearance. He was always, hair gel in his hair to the exact strand and looking good and latest clobber on to go out with his friends. And in the last few times that I met up with him, he just didn't care. He'd shaved all of his hair off. He was wearing clothes that were dirty, just no interest in his appearance. My opinion at the time, maybe he's got a lot on, maybe he's being a bit lazy at the moment. Not the case. Actually, in reality, the thought of him, getting up, showering, doing his hair, getting clothes to put on, was such a task for him because he was in such a low spot that he couldn't do it. So there's lots of things, subtle things, that I look back on now and I think, yeah, that was a sign he was struggling, but I was uneducated. I didn't know they were signs. And now I spend my life telling people that they do exist and to look out for these in their loved ones so that they don't end up like me.
It's those masks we spoke about before, haven't we?
Yeah.
The different masks that people wear, and it's so difficult to unravel the layers, isn't it? And it's easy to ask somebody how they're feeling. But again, I think what we've tried to encourage, and it's only a slight pivot on the question, but how you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, it just forces that little bit of extra thought to the answer. But it's just getting underneath the layers. It's so difficult, isn't it?
It is, and another good tip when you're asking somebody how they're doing is actually to ask them twice.
Yeah.
When you ask once, usually it's, yeah, fine, how are you? If you actually then say, how are you really? Your answer that you're going to get is probably going to be different. And sometimes it's just that additional question, asking them again, that might encourage them to speak out. So I'd really encourage that.
And it's identifying if there's a pause in their answer, being able to challenge them on that and saying, oh, hang on, I noticed a pause there, tell me, but let me ask again twice. So that's fantastic, thank you. And when you reflect back on some of the time that you've experienced, do you kind of wish there were moments of some things that people said or some things people didn't say at that time when you were going through everything?
Yeah, I would say the worst element of when I first lost Josh was actually people saying nothing. Saying nothing was worse than saying something. I'd rather you said something and got it wrong than not say anything at all. And it's actually, when you lose somebody to suicide, it is incredibly stigmatising people don't know what to say, and therefore they shy away from it and say nothing. But actually just letting the person know that they're not on their own is so important. Some of the things my friends did for me at the time, which I'll never forget, I was in such a state of despair, to be honest. Basic tasks like eating, sleeping, washing just went out the window. There would be many days that I'd get up in the morning, the doorbell would go, I'd open the door, and there'd be a lasagna waiting for me on the doorstep from one of my friends, just to encourage me to eat, or bath bombs waiting for me to encourage me to go and wash and actually get up. So it's gestures like that mean a huge amount, and actually that, you know, kept me going when I didn't really want to.
It's just those small acts of kindness to go a great deal, don't they? And what would Josh say about you sitting here today now and the work you've been doing?
When I first started Ripple, I started it in my bedroom, and I didn't know what to do from a marketing, from a design, from a strategy perspective. I was just winging it the whole way. And one of the things that I did was create a cartoon of my brother's head and my head together for Ripple. So I think firstly he'd be telling me off about doing that. But you know, I'd like to think he'd be proud of what we've accomplished in his name and in his memory, and the lives we've saved because of him.
I mean, that's amazing. That is incredibly powerful, and I don't think you realise the impact that. I know, as I said, the first time we met, you know, there's an authenticity and there's just a determination about you, which is incredible. So I've got no doubt you'd be incredibly proud. So well done you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were talking before this session, actually, we were kind of bringing to life how those small acts of empathy and how you can support people and actually follow through on those decisions, or when you're having a conversation, making sure you're following it through with an action is so powerful and so important. So it sounds like you have a fantastic friend network, absolutely. You mentioned there kind of about coming up with a strategy for Ripple and what that looked like.
Yeah. When
that was first kind of coming about and you were speaking to your friends or family about what you were doing, what was their reaction? What was their view?
Good question. I think if I take my parents firstly, they were just appeasing me. They were absolutely appeasing me. They were just thinking, look, if it gets her through each day and gives her a focus, then just let her get on with it. That was very much the opinion, I think.
Yeah.
The idea, as I said, was very much literally in my bedroom that I came up with it.
Yeah.
I spoke to friends and family. I think they were indifferent in terms of not really knowing how to support me, because again, the topic of suicide is so stigmatised and they're worried about saying the wrong thing, that they let me get on with it. And gradually, as I went for hours and hours every day, approaching businesses, approaching people within the world of mental health and suicide prevention, I got the encouragement that I needed to say to me, look, you know, I think this idea has got legs. I think you've actually got something here that you could do. And it was actually a guy that watched my interview on BBC Breakfast that got in touch with me through my website, called David. And he said to me, look, I've just watched your interview and I know I get what you're trying to do. I think my company can help you build it with the tech. I was very sceptical. I thought, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know, you know, what his intentions are here, what's in it for him. Unbelievable person. He's now a trustee of the charity. He's been with me since the first few weeks, and he helped put my idea out there and build it and make it a reality. And without him, Ripple wouldn't exist. So I'm very lucky to have met him very early on in the journey that's got Ripple to where it is today.
Yeah,
amazing, amazing. I was just going to ask about that idealisation, because again, if we look at the proposition and look at the brilliant elements of what Ripple actually does. The danger signs are really in that idealisation element, aren't they? So it's when somebody can bang their thumb as they're hammering a nail in and say, oh, bloody hell, I wish I could kill myself or something.
Yeah.
But it becomes really serious and really dangerous when people start, it's that idealisation, when they start thinking about, I'm going to do this on a certain day, at a certain time, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, make a plan.
So that research bit it's such a dangerous part of what's a horrible process.
Exactly, and the reality is now, in this day and age, that if you want to find the answer to something, we go on the internet to find it. We go on Google, we go on ChatGPT. That's what gives us the answer. It's no different when it comes to self-harm and suicide. It's just no different. And some of the stuff that my brother was looking at, it's just unbelievable that it even exists in the first place, to be honest. What Ripple does is intervene and intercept before they get to that harmful content and actually say, do you know what, there is hope, there's a different path for you, and here's some amazing support services that you can use to get the help that you need.
Amazing.
And it's that pivotal moment of crisis that Ripple interrupts that could be the difference between someone being here and someone not.
Amazing.
Sorry.
So many questions.
I know, absolutely. Everything you're saying, and you kind of alluded to a bit about what Ripple does. Can you, for those that will have heard the name Ripple, I've no doubt, because you're a multi-award-winning charity and do fantastic stuff, but if they've just heard the name, can you give them a couple of sentences about what the role and what your technology and charity does? Yeah,
so firstly, Ripple, the logo is spelt with a semicolon as the I. You wouldn't believe how many people still email me in to tell me I've spelt Ripple wrong, but it is deliberate. So the semicolon has risen as the international symbol of surviving suicide. And if you use a semicolon in a sentence, it would indicate the sentence isn't over, there's more to come. And in this context, we're saying your story isn't over, keep going, there's more to come from you. So that's the first thing I just wanted to mention about the logo and what it looks like. In terms of what it actually is, I've mentioned today, it's a piece of technology, but that means it can be downloaded as a browser extension. So it can be put onto any browser that you use, Google Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, whatever it is. And once downloaded on the browser, it means that if anybody goes on the internet and searches for something harmful, Ripple will pop up through the browser. We can now also put it on Wi-Fi, anywhere that's got a Wi-Fi network. So we've got relationships and partnerships with the Premier League. So all 20 football clubs at the Premier League are putting this on their stadiums up and down the country. That means that if I'm a fan and I go to the ground one day and I'm connected to the Wi-Fi and I search for something harmful on my phone, Ripple would again intercept me and interrupt me through the Wi-Fi network. And then finally, the third way that Ripple can be deployed, which is fairly new, is we have developed the tech so that it can be placed onto managed mobile devices now as well. So any companies that give out and provide company corporate devices, iPads, phones, we can place Ripple on there as well, which means when they're on the move, again, if they search for something harmful, Ripple can come up. So it's developed a lot since the idea in my bedroom, but there's a variety of ways now that people can get this.
Amazing.
And what are some of the maybe misconceptions or misunderstandings that people may have around suicide prevention that you're trying to challenge?
There's many. The first one that I often get from businesses is nobody would ever search for something harmful when they're at work. Nobody would ever search for this stuff on a work device. Ripple now has 2 million downloads in 51 countries around the world, and from that data, the most common time that Ripple is triggered and intercepts harmful searches is 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday.
Wow.
Suicide doesn't discriminate. It doesn't just happen at 2 o'clock in the morning after a night out on a Saturday. It can happen at any time, and that includes during working hours. So I think that's the first thing. The other aspect I wanted to mention about Ripple as well is around data privacy, which is a really key point. Ripple is not Big Brother's watching you. It doesn't look at your emails, look at your photos. It doesn't have any access to any personal information or data whatsoever. It simply sits quietly in the background, and we hope it's never seen. But if somebody is in crisis and is searching for something which you might not necessarily know or be aware of, it's there as a safety net.
And I've seen firsthand how easy it is to actually implement and go into these various systems, which is great. But what incredibly powerful statistics! What was it? So 2 million, and then what was the other bit?
So it's been downloaded 2 million times. It's in 51 countries now around the world, in 14 different languages as well. Yeah.
Well done, you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing.
Absolutely. And we did briefly discuss again before the session about kind of what might be next, some of the current challenges that are in play at the moment. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? What's next for Ripple? What's the...
Yeah, so one of the things that we're working on very hard behind the scenes at the moment is around the role that AI plays in this. So the way in which people are searching for harmful content on the internet now is changing. And I've even seen it in my own behaviour using the internet. I no longer really go to Google if I want to find the answer to something. I will actually use ChatGPT instead. It gives me more comprehensive answers. It gets me what I need quicker. It's no different when it comes to looking for content relating to self-harm and suicide. And people are now starting to use AI in order to do that. One of the things that we'd like to do is build and develop our technology so that we can fully integrate with all AI models, OpenAI, with Claude, with Copilot and so on, and make sure that if somebody is searching for something harmful on those platforms, that again we're there to provide them with support, we're there to intervene at that moment of crisis, and that person is able to know exactly where they can go to get the help that they need. And that's vitally important, and at the moment it's not safe.
Yeah. I suppose it's like with all technology, it will always progress, younger generations will use it in a different way, but the constant that needs to remain is that people are protected.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the 2 million downloads, 51 countries, Premier League and some of the brands you're actually partnering with now, there's loads you can be proud of, but what else, what else is it that you are really chuffed and humbled by as you've gone through the journey, which must have been a real roller coaster, and the progress you've made is incredible. But what else, I suppose, humbles you and are you really chuffed with?
Do you know, I'm going to stick to the football theme here. So, and hopefully your viewers won't switch off when I say this, but I'm a massive West Ham fan, and yeah, I know. That partnership for me was really poignant. I used to live in East London on Green Street a while ago.
So a film about that one.
Yes, yeah, I didn't feature in that. But yeah, so I'm a West Ham fan. My brother also followed West Ham. We've got really happy memories going to the games together and so on. I've got pictures of him in his shirt and so on. So when I first came up with this idea, I was absolutely desperate for West Ham to get behind me and to do it for my brother. And I managed to. I managed to get into the right area. They were just fantastic, the club. They got behind me straight away and deployed Ripple themselves across their stadium, across their training facilities, for all of their fans, for all of their staff. They've put me on the billboards behind the stadium. I stood on the pitch at a European game and spoke to 60,000 fans about Ripple and the fact that it's in the club. We now do an annual tournament together, which you played in, Jason. They've just been brilliant. But I think that the moment for me was stood on that pitch. It was an evening game against Seville, back in the days when we were good and playing in Europe. And yeah, just surreal. Stood on the pitch with 60,000 people around me, talking about my brother, with my brother's head on the screen.
And
Unbelievable.
Look, that September day, it really was. It was a day of celebration as well.
Yeah.
And I think, out of sadness and tragedy, quite often that celebrating and losing loved ones is never easy. In your circumstance, I can't begin to try and empathise with what you've gone through, but losing loved ones is really challenging. But having days, calendar days in the year where you celebrate and remember is special. And I loved the day. It really was a brilliant day, and I'm booked in again for this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people were there. I mean, it was incredibly busy.
Yeah.
You had ladies, men. It was a real mix.
Yeah.
It was a terrific event.
It's open to everybody. Anybody can submit a team, men, women, any age. And it's an opportunity to play five-a-side football with other people, with other teams. There's a bit of a competitiveness around it, which is always good fun. And I think we had 20 teams last year, which was just fantastic. And, a lot of those guys and girls that signed up and came to that event openly struggle with their own mental health. So actually coming to an event like that with people that get it, having the opportunity to talk to other people, getting out, exercising, being at West Ham's facilities, which is unusual to get to play somewhere like that.
Absolutely.
It was just a brilliant day, and we're going to make it even better this year.
Can't wait. I'm in.
I think it really sounds like a fantastic memory to have had, absolutely. Are there any other kind of particular moments that stand out where you've kind of stopped and thought, this is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, this is why it's so important?
There's been many. I think probably one of the most poignant ones for me is actually, it's a strange story actually. So I was selling a coffee table from my living room on Facebook Marketplace.
Right.
And a lady got in touch with me on Facebook Marketplace and said, I'd like to buy the table. Gave her my address, she turned up at my front door, and I opened the door and she burst into tears.
Gosh.
And I said, the coffee table isn't that bad. But she was really deeply emotional, in front of me. And I said, what's wrong? She said, oh, you're Alice, aren't you? And I said, yeah. She said, last summer at my work, your technology interrupted me at work.
Wow.
I didn't want to be here anymore, and I searched for how I could end my life, and it was your tool that came up for me. And she said, I'm now getting counselling, and I've spoken to my husband about how I'm feeling, but I wouldn't have done that if Ripple hadn't have come up for me at that point.
Wow.
And I think, it went from a day-to-day task of just selling an item on Facebook Marketplace to actually being told that you've saved someone's life.
Yeah.
And I think that just made me stop and think, okay, this is bigger now than Josh. This is actually having an impact. And, this is only a lady that told me. There's probably thousands out there that haven't told me.
Absolutely.
that could have happened to.
Yeah.
So that was pretty special.
Absolutely, really impactful moment. And like you say, just by chance knocking on the door to come and tell you, but there will be thousands of people that have the same thought process. Amazing.
And so we talk about suicide, but really, again, what's being inferred there is, Ripple's really about life. It's about celebrating life. I know we just talked about celebrating a moment ago. What gives you real hope then, moving forward? I know we were speaking, off camera about some of the the brilliant individuals, subject matter experts who I've seen coming towards MIMHC with as we've become a foundation, which I'm really humbled by. What gives you hope as we move forward?
I think mental health as a topic is now really starting to be taken seriously, and it wasn't before. It just wasn't. I think it was looked at very negatively if somebody experienced poor mental health, and now I think it's seen actually as a strength if somebody's being open enough and courageous enough to share how they're feeling. So that's a change definitely for the good. From a suicide prevention perspective, there's still work to be done there. I would say from my experience being fully immersed in this topic now for 5 years plus, suicide is probably about 5 years to 10 years behind the curve of the mental health agenda at the moment. There's still stigma. Nobody wants to talk about suicide. It's not a nice, happy topic.
Yeah.
But as you said at the beginning, it's necessary. And talking about it and actually knowing what to say and having the tools in your back pocket to communicate with people that you're worried about can save lives. So it gives me hope that it's becoming more, I guess, accepted as a topic going forward, not just in general, but even with the government, with bills and acts that are coming to the forefront now as well.
And I suppose we've seen with our survey, Alice, that we do every year. So we've got 4 years worth of data now, which we can do a temperature check on our sector and assess the progress that we are or aren't making. And one of the positives is that when we look back to 2021, when we did our first survey, we had about 500 respondents, and the respondents suggested that there was about 32% of the respondents indicated that their businesses had some sort of mental health and wellbeing framework.
Yeah.
We've increased that, so if we look at fast forward to 2025, so some of the work we've been doing with MIMHC, we've fast forwarded to probably about 70% when in terms of the respondents saying that was there. But he's a bit of tick box, and that meaningfulness sitting behind it. And as we try and move our foundation from being raising awareness to actually meaningful action and action that can make a difference, we've just got to remove some of this maybe token effort or tick box exercise that's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And sadly it is still out there. The difference in some of the conversations I've had between industries and with businesses is quite stark. Some just get it and they want to do the right thing because they genuinely care and it's the right thing to do. Others are looking at their KPIs and thinking, we need to tick that box and job done. And that's no longer acceptable to do that. So you don't realise how horrendous this is until it has impacted you. It's like anything. And I wish every day that what's happened to our family hasn't happened, but unfortunately this is continuing to happen. There is 2 men a day, for example, in construction that take their own lives in the UK every single day. They need to be getting behind initiatives similar to the ones that you guys are working on now.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a lot of our listeners, they won't be clinicians, they'll be leaders or colleagues across our sector. What do you want them to know better, or what do you want workplaces to understand better?
That I would say mental health and suicide is not just a one-size-fits-all approach, and there needs to be a plethora of things in place to help and support people, not just one tick box exercise. So that could be having an employee assistance programme. It could be having mental health first aiders in the workplace so people know where to go for support. It could be by managers showing more of an interest in their staff as people, not as employees. It could be by having more social events where people actually get together. Since COVID, lots of us work a lot of time remotely. It could be deploying Ripple in the background, or it could be everything, all of the above. It isn't just one item that solves the problem, and the chances are you will absolutely have a member of staff at the very minimum who is struggling with their mental health, and you might not know anything about it. So it's just really important to have that in the back of your mind at all times and make sure that you're doing and putting into practice these areas of improvement that can support your staff, not just now, but actually in the longer term as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, again, coming back to the survey that we did, and what was clear was that respondents were looking for role models. So they were looking for leaders who walk the walk, and they were also looking for line managers and that team leaders to have an understanding of what to do if there is an issue. So helping and providing the right kind of support. And I think as we move forward, mental health first aiders is an absolute given. So if you're a signatory within MIMHC, we're going to ensure that there's over 100, minimum over 100 mental health first aiders that will we're delivering to the mortgage sector, absolutely free for signatories. But just the importance of role models. I mean, what kind of focus do you think there should be with role models, and what does best practice, what does what does that look like? What do role models need to be walking the walk and delivering?
So I think firstly having an awareness that your staff have lives outside of work. You just don't know what they might have going on.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries, making sure that they do actually have time to switch off, and it's not all work and really long hours that's going to potentially lead to burnout in one of your staff members. I think it's leading by example in terms of my boss, for instance, in my other job, when she goes on holiday, she really does go on holiday. She's not taking phone calls, she's not answering emails, she's actually switching off to spend time with her family. And because my manager is doing that and I see her doing that, it makes me feel like it's more acceptable for me to do that as well. If she was taking phone calls and emailing me while she's on holiday, there's an assumption that I should be doing the same thing. So act in a way that you want your colleagues to follow. And nobody wants to be working when they're on holiday, do they?
Mm-hmm.
I think also, in Ripple, for instance, when we have our team meetings every week, the first 10-15 minutes is spent by each of my team uploading a picture of what they've been up to in the last week. It could be a dog walk, it could be their football team winning, it could be a meal that they've made, just anything to just show an interest in them outside of work. I think is really important. So those would be my things.
And I got brilliant tips and insights there. And I think some of the best leaders I've worked with, some of the best people I've worked with who've been incredibly successful, but even without that success, just care. They're just genuine people.
Yeah.
And if you care, guess what? Your memory's good. You remember things. If you genuinely care, it's incredible how good your actual memory is. But you touched on earlier about the importance of conversation and saying something rather than nothing at all is such something you advocate. And I'm just wondering, obviously our service has got to keep the conversation going, so just what kind of emphasis do you put on conversation?
It's conversation is life-saving when it comes to this topic. I think language is really important when we're talking about having a conversation. I mentioned earlier, it's absolutely better to say something that you might get wrong than nothing at all.
Yeah.
But that's not to underestimate that's hard.
Yeah.
If you're worried about somebody, that is really difficult to actually have the courage to go up to them, sit them down quietly and say, are you all right? I'm worried about you, because you're scared about the answer that you might receive back. But it's so important. We've actually got a guide at Ripple which I'll share, and it's called How to Talk About Suicide. And it gives you some tips on what you can say and what you shouldn't say. So for example, the term committed suicide is an outdated term that adds to stigma. If we're talking about cancer, we don't say committed cancer or committed a stroke, and therefore we shouldn't say committed suicide. Suicide hasn't been a crime in this country since the 1960s. So instead we'd say something like died by suicide, which is less stigmatising. We've also got successful attempts at suicide. Was it a successful attempt or was it an unsuccessful attempt? I would argue that suicide's never a success.
Agree.
And it should instead be, something around made an attempt on their life. There's subtle changes that we can make in the language that will impact the conversation and help you to speak to people that you love. But I'll share this guide, and I'd really encourage everybody to save it, have it in your back pocket, so that when you need it, if you need it, you've got some guidance on what to say.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. It's fantastic that there's tools available out there. If it was a conversation where maybe somebody had identified perhaps a colleague at work they were concerned about, what would be your advice? What would be a perfectly human, acceptable way to encourage that person to feel confident in handling that conversation?
So I think firstly, letting them know that you're there to talk, trying to find somewhere that is neutral and quiet.
Yeah.
And I think the key to having those conversations is asking open questions and listening. I can't emphasise enough how listening is important. It's not an opportunity to say, oh, it's not that bad, because you're then downplaying how they're actually feeling. It's an opportunity for you to listen, because whatever they're telling you, if they're courageous enough to do so, to them is a huge thing. It might not be to you, but to them it is. And so take everything they say seriously, believe them, make sure that there is an opportunity there where you can signpost to the correct support. That could be a partner, it could be friends, it could be a GP. Making sure that you're asking questions around if they have actually had thoughts of suicide, asking them outright.
Yeah.
That's hard to do, but actually asking them outright is one of the best things that you can do. Because if they come back to you and actually say, do you know what, yes I am, they've then got an opportunity to actually describe how they're feeling, and they might not have had that before. And that's so important. So asking them outright, and really, as I said, listening is the key. Not putting your opinions, not putting your stance on it, and making it all about them so that they feel heard.
Absolutely. I think people can often be quite quick to, there's a problem, I want to solve it, let me do something, let me help. And I think that's a fair reaction sometimes.
Yeah.
But you're right, that actually sometimes it's allowing the space and to sit, and that can feel uncomfortable, but that's being supportive and actively listening. So
Yeah. And it can feel uncomfortable. It's not nice, but it has to happen.
It's a real skill, isn't it?
It is.
That active listening, as you said there, it really is a skill. And then look, you've accomplished. I'm conscious of time. There's 3 or 4 bits that I definitely still want to run through. And conscious of time, just achieved so much in the just over 5 years you've been doing. Ripple and been pushing as hard as you have. What ambitions? So maybe ambitions over the next next few years. You've accomplished loads, but what ambitions have we still got?
So the ambition for us at Ripple is to create an AI model that categorises the internet. In a nutshell, we want to be able to see harmful content as soon as it arrives in whatever format, whether it be a forum, a website, on social media. We want it to be able to flag what it is and remove it.
Amazing.
And that's the plan. So over the next couple of years, that's where we want to go.
And that collaborating with, we've got other people operating and trying to create positive change as well. The importance of collaboration, cannot be underestimated as well, can it?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. You can't do anything on your own in this space. It's just too big. And we've seen firsthand the impact that collaboration can have with other charities, other organisations that are looking to prioritise this area, and you just achieve so much more as a group than you would ever do as an individual.
Yeah, and we're still early stages. Even though we've been going over 4 years, I still don't think we've passed first base. So we've got 320 plus signatories. I think we've got 25,000 reach, which is incredible. But we're still scratching the surface, and the momentum and the opportunity to do some good is huge. And as we've said previously, we're committed to work with people like yourselves, and we want to do whatever we can to just improve and make sure that people don't suffer in silence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that that 25,000 reach is phenomenal, but you are right, we are only just scratching the surface, and many people listening will be just scratching the surface of their own mental health journey and supporting others or understanding the sector more. You've been in this area for a little while. What kind of would you explain to them and want people to truly understand that you've learned from your closeness to the sector?
I would say that there is a misconception of certain age groups only that would suffer with mental health. So in actual fact, it's men over the age of 50 that are actually at extremely high risk of suicide. There's also certain industries that are at an elevated risk of suicide and poor mental health. I mentioned construction earlier, that's one. Another one is the veterinary industry. But really this is a reality that it can impact, and it does impact anybody and everybody. You don't have to be a certain age, a certain gender, have a certain job to be impacted with your mental health and to experience suicidal thoughts. And I think no matter how good you see and think someone's life is, that might not be the reality of that person. A typical example would be the comedian Robin Williams.
Of course.
You know, outside, he's rich, he's got a family that loves him, he's got a home, he's got a car, he's in amazing films, everybody loves him. He took his own life. So, and there's many examples of that.
Of course,
So I think really just don't have the ignorance of thinking that this won't affect you, and make sure that you have the tools, the skills, the knowledge and the education to understand what this topic is, so that you can use these skills when it's needed, and ultimately that will help you and will save lives.
That's amazing. It's a brilliant response, that. And look, our sector, again, I look at the 2025 survey, we've got 22% of the respondents indicating that their mental health was poor or of concern, so that's nearly double the UK average, and that's despite 85% of the respondents actually working from home either permanently or hybrid. So this panacea that people kind of wanted pre-COVID, they've kind of got that now in their working environments, but the isolation, the anxiety and the actual mental health well-being has actually worsened. So as I said, we're just starting the journey. We've got a lot to achieve as we go through the next few years. But what about away from Ripple? So we spoke before about the love of West Ham and how great that September day is, and to experience what you've experienced there is incredible. But what else are you doing away from Ripple that makes you happy?
So I've got two very naughty dogs that keep me occupied. In true East London fashion, they are called Reggie and Ronnie.
Love it.
And they're two miniature schnauzers, so they are my life, and we go on lots of walks and get out the house together. So they keep me very busy. Football's obviously a huge passion of mine. I go home and away to watch West Ham as much as I can. And other than that, it's really supporting my parents, making sure that they're okay, and I'm incredibly close with them, so I try and do as much as I can with them, as I possibly can as well.
Family first.
Absolutely, that's wonderful.
So you mentioned before about when you're away from changing the world with Ripple, your passion for West Ham, which is incredible. What else are you getting up to away from work? What else is making you happy?
So I do have another job alongside Ripple. I work full time for Deloitte as a cybersecurity specialist. So that also keeps me very, very, very busy. So I like to keep up to date with all of the latest tech. I'll be the first one to hopefully buy a robot to put in my house to do my washing and cooking and so on. So very interested in all of that. But look, if I'm being completely honest with you, I find switching off really hard. I find it really difficult. And the way in which I've coped and continue to cope with losing my brother is to keep busy. And I know that's not going to fly forever. There will absolutely be a time when I'm going to have to stop and slow down. But at the moment, I'm riding that wave and keeping busy and occupied with lots of things in the diary, things to look forward to, is what keeps me going.
Amazing.
Thank you.
And if people take just maybe one thing from today, what would you want that to be?
I think it would go back to the ask twice piece. We all say, hi, how are you? How are you doing? You okay? Every day in life. But if there is somebody that you're worried about, please ask them twice, because that could be the opening of a conversation that you need to have.
Amazing. Listen, before I close off then with some of my own final thoughts, as a first go, this has been okay, hasn't it?
So far, so good.
And what would be your closing reflection? So I said how brilliant Alice would be. What would be some of your closing reflections be?
Yeah, firstly, a huge thank you, Alice. I found this conversation, I'm sure everyone listening as well, hugely informative and powerful, and it's definitely giving us lots of things to take away into my own business and into the industry, and definitely makes me reflect on the Charter's 6 key principles. So I found it really positive, so thank you. Our industry is extremely fast-paced and high-pressured, and that intensity can often drive a lot of our successes, but it can also take its toll, and having that kind of focus on how important these conversations are, how necessary they are, even when they're uncomfortable, has really been something I want to make sure we're remembering throughout. So thank you to you both for letting me have the opportunity to come, and I look forward to more co-hosting activities.
Thank you. Some great final thoughts there from yourself, and thank you to both of you for today. But just, I suppose, to wrap up from my side. So look, conversations like this don't end when the recording stops. So if today has reminded you of someone, stirred something personal, or simply made you pause, that matters. And you don't have to sit with it alone. So we mentioned the importance of conversation. Ripple exists because silence can be dangerous and connection can be life-saving. None of us need to be experts, we just need to be present, curious and kind. So whether you're a leader, a colleague, a friend, or someone quietly struggling, please keep talking, please keep listening, and please keep the conversation going. Alice, thank you for your honesty, your courage, and the hope that you're creating every single day. Thanks to my co-hosts for joining me for this first one. And look, if this conversation has stirred something for any of our listeners, please don't carry it alone. Reach out and let's keep the conversation going.